This is the OnePlus 6T. In this video, I want to take a thoughtful look at this device and answer the question, should this be your next phone? So let's get the specs out of the way. It's got a Snapdragon 845 processor, 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 or 256 gigabytes of storage. It has a dual camera configuration at 16 and 20 megapixels. It's got a 3700 milliamp hour battery. The display is a 6.41 inch optic AMOLED screen, and it runs Oxygen OS 9.0 based on Android 9.0 Pie. The device I have is the 8 gigabyte RAM, 128 gigabyte storage model in Midnight Black. And just to be completely transparent here, OnePlus did send me the device primarily for Android Police videos, but this video is not sponsored. So first, let's take a look at the design. And honestly, it looks quite good. After seeing tons and tons of phones being released this year, simply ripping off the iPhone X's design, the OnePlus 6T brings something new to the table. Sure, it's another thin slab of glass and metal, but there are some subtleties that I really like. For instance, on the rear of the device, there's a super subtle S reflection that appears under certain lighting. It looks pretty neat. The display is massive. Although the phone is pretty much the same size as its predecessors, the screen is much, much larger. And while the screen is still 1080p, I haven't really noticed any fuzziness or a lack of sharpness with the display. It looks quite nice. Now at the top of the screen, there is that notch, and some people really dislike notches altogether, but I think as far as notches go, this one looks quite nice. In fact, I opted not to disable it in software just because I like looking at it. It's aesthetically pleasing, honestly. Now, turning to the software, and this might sound crazy, but it is straight up the smoothest experience I've had with an Android smartphone. I haven't noticed a single hiccup or major glitch with this software. It's quite awesome. Opening and closing apps is super fast, scrolling is extremely fluid, and just day-to-day use has been extremely enjoyable. Now there was one bug that I noticed that was super small, it was a tiny little glitch, and it's not important at all, but I did want to mention it, and that was when I was switching between the navigation options. So the navigation buttons, the Android P gestures, and then the iPhone X-like gestures. After I was switching between them, I went to the recents, and the recents windows were super small. Thought this was a little weird, so I did a reboot, and then there was no problem at all. So that was the only bug that I noticed, but it's not a big deal at all. Overall, software has been outstanding on this device. Now, to even be able to get into the device, you need to have a way to unlock it. So there are 3 different ways. First is the normal PIN, which is standard across all Android devices. You type a PIN in and it logs you in. Next, we have Face Unlock, which was debuted with the OnePlus 5T, I believe. And basically what it does, it's similar to the iPhone X, although it doesn't do as much of like dot matrix stuff that it throws at your face. But it is more secure than just like, it won't let you in if you show a picture to it, for example. So I've been using that. It is lightning fast. I mean, it is so fast. I turn on the display and I barely even see the lock screen because it's already authenticated me. And finally, kind of the standout feature of this device is that it has an in-display fingerprint scanner. There are very few phones that even have this feature, and OnePlus is doing it fairly well. It's not perfect, it's definitely not as fast as the physical scanners that you've seen on, say, the OnePlus 6, 5T, and other devices, but it is moderately fast. The way it works is it turns on that little spot where your finger is to maximum brightness to kind of get a reading, and then it'll authenticate and log you in. It's not very fast, like I mentioned, and it also doesn't work very well in pitch black darkness. So typically, if it's super dark, I end up just putting in the PIN because also the Face ID, or it's not Face ID, but the Face Unlock can't scan my face. One of the standout features of Oxygen OS is the customizability. You can tweak so many different settings on this device. Navigation, for example. You have 3 different options. You have your typical Android back, home, and recents. You have the Android P gestures, which I personally hate. And then you have something similar to the iPhone X's gestures. However, since this is Android, I found that the iPhone X's gestures just didn't really jive very well with Android as a whole, so I ended up just using the standard back, home, and recents option. But it is quite nice that you can change this to whatever you'd like. You can adjust the notch display, so you can have the notch visible or you can have it hidden with black pixels, but you still get the extra screen real estate with your notifications and clock and things like that. I personally did not switch it over to hiding the notch because I actually kind of like looking at the notch. It looks kind of cool and it makes this device a bit unique. But again, if you want to hide it, you totally can, and I like that there's the option to do so. And pretty standard with Oxygen OS is the fact that you can change the theme, so you can go from light and dark. You can also change the accent colors, and you can also change the font between Roboto and OnePlus's own Slate font. And the list goes on. You can change the status bar, disabling or enabling various icons. You can adjust the alert slider, and you can customize the quick gestures. So yes, you can really customize Oxygen OS. Gaming mode is a pretty nifty feature. Basically what it does is whenever you open a game, it'll automatically optimize the device to give you the best performance. It'll also hide notifications so you aren't interrupted while you're playing the game. And yeah, it's quite convenient, and I wish all Android devices did this. And honestly, there are so many more features in Oxygen OS that I just can't cover them all in this video, but rest assured you will not be wanting for features. Alright, so if you're using this device a ton, customizing it, playing your games in gaming mode, how's the battery doing? Well, in my experience, it's been quite good. Just a few days ago, I took it off the charger at 6 p.m. and 2 days later, I was down to about 15% by 5 a.m. I got around 5 hours of screen on time. And just to be clear, battery life depends heavily on how much you use your phone, but I found it to be quite nice, especially much better than my Pixel 3, which at max would get 4 hours of screen on time, if even that, in any given day. So your battery's super low, you need to charge it. What do? Well, you grab the included fast charging brick, which most companies don't include, Apple, and you charge that OnePlus 6T. Thanks to Dash Charge, this phone charges about 60% in around 30 minutes, which is very, very fast compared to many smartphones. Honestly, it's the best charging experience I've ever had with any smartphone. Alright, so now let's look at the camera, which is arguably one of the biggest components in whether or not you buy a smartphone. First, let's look at the software. So the OnePlus 6T comes with the camera app, obviously, and it has your typical features like photo and video mode, slow motion, hyperlapse, panoramas, things like that. But I feel like the biggest feature is the Pro mode. I feel like every camera app should have this. Basically what the Pro mode does, it gives you control of all the aspects of taking a photo, from shutter speed to white balance to ISO, it's all there. I personally like taking photos in manual mode, so this is quite a nice feature for the OnePlus 6T to have. Turning to the hardware side of the cameras, which consists of a pair of 16 and 20 megapixel shooters on the rear and a 16 megapixel camera on the front, we see what is, in my opinion, the weakest part of the phone. Now, don't get me wrong, these photos are good, they're just not great. They lack a lot of the vibrance of the Pixel or iPhone cameras, which themselves aren't at the level of Samsung vibrance. And the other issue, they're not very sharp. While it's less noticeable with the wide camera, the 2X is really, really soft. It's fine with close-ups to get a bit of a macro look, but at greater distances, it really falls apart. At this point, unless it's a Pixel or an iPhone, I straight up never touch the portrait mode if it's from another manufacturer. And yep, that's bad. That's really bad. Here's a few more photos. In summary, I think that while you can get away with using the 6T's camera, it's certainly not the best, and it is definitely the weakest point of this phone, unfortunately. And so, the big question, should you buy this device? If you're looking for an incredible smartphone for not a lot of money, this phone is for you. It has the best bang for your buck value I've ever seen in a smartphone. Sure, it doesn't have a 1440p display or the best camera in any smartphone, but you gotta remember how much you're saving with this device. At around $550, this thing is honestly a steal. I can wholeheartedly give it my thumbs up. Well, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like cinematic tech videos, hit that subscribe button. Thanks, and I'll see y'all later.